And the thing that gets me about this is it isn't new. None of this is new. This may have blown past some barriers, but I don't even think that. This really isn't new. Now, to the extent that certain demographics are seeing it for the first time, such as some millennials, there may be probative value in this, but we need to keep all of this in perspective. This is who these people are. I've been telling you, the mask is coming off. The camouflage is disappearing. And for some reason, they're feeling their oats and they're confident as they can be because they're convinced they're going to win everything back in November, going to impeach Trump. Trump's gone. Just like they got rid of Ronnie Jackson, they'll be able to get rid of whoever with innuendo, lying New York Times stories about Devin Nunes. I mean, it just piles on top of itself. And in the process, they are, I think, really for the first time in a long time, being totally open about who they are. And what they are and who they are is undiluted, raw, sewage-level hate. Greetings, folks. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, and a brand new week of broadcast excellence. I want to take you back to me on this program last Wednesday, talking about comedy and the left and hatred, just to remind those of you who may have missed it. Great American institutions, which used to be trusted implicitly, with just a few occasional doubts, have been weaponized. They've been weaponized in the effort to destroy Donald Trump. At the root of all of this, at the root of every effort to get rid of Donald Trump is something called hatred. Now, we can get into the reasons why if you want. Why are they so mad that Trump won? Well, Trump wasn't supposed to win. It wasn't possible for Trump to win. In these people's world, he's just a total full-fledged reprobate, but he did win. And every hardcore belief that they trusted was thrown upside down. If somebody like Trump can't win, they look at themselves as having really screwed up, messed up. This has to be fixed in their minds. But what is propelling them? Their propulsion is pure, raw, undiluted hate. And it's infecting as much of America they can infect. We talk about a late night comedy. There is no late night comedy anymore. It's late night hate. And it is late night hate all aimed at Donald Trump. Right. And that's exactly what happened Saturday night at the so-called White House Correspondents' Dinner. You know, members of the drive-by, certain elements of the media acting outraged and thinking we need to have an apology for this. Not all of them, but some of them are. And it's all bogus. This was intended. In fact, the president of the White House Correspondents' Association, Margaret Talloff or whatever, she's a part-time analyst at CNN as well. They wanted this to happen. She was hired for this specific purpose. It's been stated so. They intended this, is the point. They must put their hate on display. So all of these reactions in the aftermath, it might have been overboard. It might have been... As I say, a few people may think that. And now I've seen the usual reaction, well, it's Trump's fault. It wouldn't have even happened if Trump hadn't called Carly Fiorina a horse face, or if he hadn't made fun of Rosie O'Donnell. Well, and Trump's responsible for it, so how come nobody got mad at Trump? Everybody got mad at Trump. No, I mean, the idea that Trump didn't get some grief over some of those things, but here's the difference. Here's the difference. Is no doubt that this babe on Saturday night was a walking hate fest. Donald Trump is funny. You can't help but laugh at Trump. Did any of you see Saturday night in Washington, Michigan? Did you see Trump's rally? Hour, 20 minutes. May have been one of his best ever. It was uproariously funny, but it was right on. I mean, it was just every aspect of it he nailed. I mean, he could not have done it any better than he did. And it's totally ad-libbed. There aren't any notes. There was a teleprompter because there are certain recitations on the successful agenda that he wanted to make sure and mention. And so he would turn to the prompter then, but he's a professional at going to the prompter, then going back to ad-lib, not losing his place, kind of just like we do it here on the EIB network. Improv rants never lose our place. sometimes have to read printed material, such as when I'm quoting things. But then back to the point, it was masterful. The thing is that people genuinely laugh with Trump, and the laughter that was in the Washington Hilton ballroom, it was hate laughter. I mean, I watched a little bit of it. And I did not watch the event. I actually saw a YouTube video after having so many people tell me about it. And I looked at the YouTube video. Thing's only 19 minutes. I said, I can make 19 minutes. So I watched the whole thing. And the thing that struck me is, what was her name? Michelle Wolf. I never heard of her, which is important. I'll get to that and why that's the case in a moment. She has her own show coming up on Netflix. Now, unlike others who engage in this kind of behavior, she will not get her show canceled. There will not be sponsor boycotts because there aren't any. So Netflix is going to promote the hell out of her now because whatever 35, 40% of the country thought that she was great, but she's not a trailblazer. She's a copycat. My point is the left has been doing this exact thing, I think, since George W. Bush was inaugurated. Starting with the aftermath of the 2000 election and the Florida recount, the left has been unhinged and believing at every election they lose is illegitimate. They have been cheated somehow. Everybody's talking about how unfair the lines were toward Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and they were. I mean, don't misunderstand. I'm just saying it isn't new. Sarah Palin. Have people forgotten the horrendous treatment Sarah Palin got for her entire political career? From the moment she was named McCain's vice presidential nominee to the present, Sarah Palin and her entire family have been treated viciously, mean-spirited hate at each and every report, much like what happened on Saturday night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Who is Sarah Palin? She is a strong, successful, attractive, articulate politician. She's a wife and she's a mother. She did not abort a Down syndrome baby. That made them mad. She has conservative values. She burst on the scene. One of the best political speeches of our time was her acceptance speech as McCain's nominee. I think that was in Indianapolis, somewhere in Indiana. And she was trashed mercilessly for years in every way possible because the left is scared to death of people like her. Liberal women have garnered and are now exhibiting so much hate. It's breathtaking to behold. Who knew? I mean, I knew feminism was sponsored in anger, and I knew the modern era of it grew and was nurtured with anger, but they haven't gotten rid of any of it. The anger just continues to build, and it compresses. And it is just inescapable now. And I don't know what is attractive about it. Well, it isn't attractive. And that's ultimately going to redound to all of our benefit. This hatred for conservative women, not new. Michelle Malkin, Laura Ingraham, Candace Owens, Ann Coulter, the Trump women, you name it. It's a never-ending stream of left-wing hate toward conservative women, same kind of hate toward conservative African Americans, same type of hate toward conservatives in general. Social media, news shows, Hollywood, it's endless. But they intended this on Saturday night. Let's go to some examples here for those of you who may not. We've had to bleep a lot of this, but for those of you who may not have seen it, here first is a montage, and this again is Michelle Wolf. I had never heard of her. I guess she used to work at Wall Street at Bear Stearns, which that would make you mad because it got shut down. I think she was a JP Morgan Chase for a while, and she was some sort of a roving correspondent for Comedy Central. Comedy Central, which is actually one of the outposts of hate or the American left. Now she's got her own Netflix show starting in May. Well, I forget the date. I don't know what the show is. But Margaret Teloff, who runs the White House Correspondents Association, specifically wanted this babe, specifically and for the express reason that the White House Correspondents Association wanted exactly what they got. Here's a brief little montage of it.
Women started knitting those hats. When I first saw them, I was like, that's a I guess mine just has a lot more yarn on it. It turns out the President of the United States is the one you're not allowed to grab. A woman's probably not going to in front of anyone, right? Paul Ryan also couldn't make it. Of course, he's already been circumcised. Unfortunately, while they were down there, they also took his Ivanka cleans up nice. She's the diaper genie of the administration. On the outside, she looks sleek, but the inside, it's still full of I did work at Bear Stearns in 2008, so although I haven't been sexually harassed, I've definitely been Yeah, that whole company went down on me without my consent. He grabs because he thinks there might be loose change in them. Like an immigrant who was brought here by his parents and didn't do anything wrong. I gotta get the out of here.
Right, it was 19 minutes of that kind of stuff, shouting, yelling, the distinctive voice. Here is a specific, this is what this comedian had to say about abortion. Now, this shows you what soullessness looks like, in my humble opinion. Soullessness has taken over the American left, and this is how it manifests.
Mike Pence is also very anti-choice. He thinks abortion is murder, which, first of all, don't knock it till you try it. And when you do try it, really knock it. You know, you got to get that baby out of there. And yeah, sure, you can groan all you want. I know a lot of you are very anti-abortion, you know, unless it's the one you got for your secret mistress.
Can you imagine C-SPAN? Can you imagine C-SPAN? Now, C-SPAN radio bumped out of this at the halfway point and went and played something very boring, Washington Journal, Washington something or other. But that, somebody tell me this is funny. That little comment on abortion, Mike Pence. You see, what happens in circumstances like this, she happens to give voice to what they really think about it. And when they're confronted, when they are hit smack dab in the face with their own words by somebody they hired, who's supposedly there to make them laugh, the reason it makes them nervous is because they don't look at it this way, they don't talk about it this way. They try to characterize and perpetuate the idea abortion is an illness, it's a sickness that threatens the life of the mother. And somebody comes along and hits them right upside the head with this, and it makes them nervous because this is not supposed to happen. Abortion is not to be discussed honestly in terms of the way the leftists actually feel about it. Up next, women who attack women. And as I say, the anger of liberal women is, I guess, boundless.
We should definitely talk about the women in the Trump administration. There's Kellyanne Conway. Man, she has the perfect last name for what she does. Conway. It's like if my name was Michelle Jokes, frizzy hair, small. You guys gotta stop putting Kellyanne on your shows. All she does is lie. If you don't give her a platform, she has nowhere to lie. It's like that old saying, if a tree falls in the woods, how do we get Kellyanne under that tree?
Now she went on to say, not that I wish her any harm, I just want her to get stuck under the tree. Have any of you seen the movie or read the book, The Handmaid's Tale? You've seen it? Okay. I need to know, thumbs up or thumbs down? You like the movie. I do not believe that I've got somebody on my staff that liked the movie. I don't. Do you know what that is? That The Handmaid's Tale is a dystopian story. It's by Margaret Atwood, who herself needs some help. And you're not familiar with this, Mr. Well, it was a big extended series on Hulu. It was a book, and it's an extended series on Hulu. And I think season 2 of it has either premiered or will soon. And what it is what feminist women fear will happen if traditional America regains its power. They will be wearing bonnets and look like Amish women, actually more like Arab women. Only their noses and eyes will be able to be seen. They'll work in the fields, tilling the corn and all of this, milking the cows. They are total slaves to the male-dominated culture. And it is big. It is big with millennials. It is big with the left today, because everything about their existence is dystopian. They think they're creating utopia, but they're scared to death. They have these paranoid visions of conservatism and Christian dominance. And The Handmaid's Tale is a personification of what they think will happen to women. Barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, not allowed to talk, only when spoken to. Your vision of what you think marriage ought to be, exactly right. Well, I got to take a break, but the next bite deals with The Handmaid's Tale and Sarah Huckabee, so don't go away. None of this that happened Saturday night is new. I stopped going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I don't know, 1994 or 1995. I was first invited to go to this thing, and that's how you had to. News organizations buy tables, and then they invite guests. And so my first time was as a guest of the Washington Times. And my first time at this thing, Bill Clinton tells a racist joke involving me, essentially calls me a racist. And the crowd just hooped and hollered. Everybody turned and looked at me. Half the place applauded. And I'm not even into year 7 of this program. And I'm walking out at the end of the Chris Matthews, of all people. You can't let this stand. You were just called a racist by the President of the United States. You cannot let that happen. You got to fight back. You cannot just ignore this. So we didn't, and we dealt with it in the ensuing weeks. And I think I went to one more, and I just said, why show up at these things? Because it was nothing more than the liberal media conducting a hate fest on conservatives. I never understood why so many Republicans and conservatives showed up at this thing, unless it was because, well, the president's there and you pay homage to the president, and it's the media and you got to go through the motions and making it look like we're all one big happy family. But I never understood it, because there's no friendship here. Everybody to act phony one night of the year, to act like they're all on the same team and act like everybody gets along. And it's clearly a one-way street. Now, just to illustrate for you how none of this is new, I want to take you back 9 years. White House Correspondents' Dinner, May 9th, 2009. Same place, Washington Hilton. Wanda Sykes was the evening's entertainment.
Rush Limbaugh said he hopes this administration fails. Like, I don't care about people losing their homes or jobs or soldiers in Iraq. He just wants the country to fail. To me, that's treason. He's not saying anything differently than what Osama bin Laden is saying. I think maybe Rush Limbaugh was the 20th hijacker. Rush Limbaugh, I hope the country fails. I hope his kidneys fail. How about that? He needs a good waterboarding. That's what he needs.
You hear the applause at the suggestion that my kidneys fail, which, of course, for those of you in Rio Linda would mean I would die. So this isn't new. And Wanda Sykes is an idiot, but she was a heroine that night. And that was another year. Al Franken was the entertainment. And Bill Clinton got up before Franken and said something. And I just want to thank Al Franken. I want to thank Al Franken for that book, because you know what? Rush Limbaugh is a big, fat idiot. And the place erupted, a standing ovation. And I wasn't even there. and I said, this is great. Look at how I'm living rent-free in these people's heads. But the idea that any of this is new, folks, people are going to have to come to grips with the fact of what we're up against. These are people who are tearing down and trying to rip our culture apart because they don't think they fit in. They don't think they are normal. They know they are not the majority. They're not even close to it, and it bothers them, and they're trying to overturn everything and redefine everything so that they are considered what's normal, and they are considered the majority, and they aren't, and they aren't. And it's just, it's going to continue, and they're going to continue to lose elections. The president in Washington Township, Michigan, on Saturday night, made it known that the midterms are very important, and he was doing his best to energize everybody and tell them they needed to get out and vote just like they did in 2016. And you would expect him to say this, but he said that he doesn't think the Democrats are going to win. He doesn't think there's any blue wave that's going to happen because he thinks he's still very popular and that things happening in the country are good and they're going to continue to happen. I mean, can you believe the president of South Korea has already, for the most intent, nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize? And the latest on that is that Kim Jong-un has volunteered to denuclearize all of North Korea, and he has invited, says he will invite, if all the negotiations transpire, that he will invite the media and others to come witness him destroy all of North Korea's nuclear weapons capability. None of that's happened yet. And of course, with the North Koreans, they lie and will say anything. So it's way premature to think that anything that's happening now is actually going to have any sort of lasting impact. But the point is, none of this has ever happened before with any prior American administration. There are things happening for the good all over this country. You know something else about Trump? One of the things that hit me about this investigation into Trump is how unblemished he may really be. Donald Trump has spent, 50 years in real estate in some of the toughest markets in the world, Las Vegas, New York City, Atlantic City. They have been pouring through Donald Trump and his life for I don't know how long now. They've had unlimited budgets. They've had unlimited time. And they've been doing all of this with the goal of getting the guy impeached and driving down his approval numbers to the point the American people wanted him to resign and be gotten rid of. There have been at least 5 investigations, and we learned late last week from the House Intelligence Committee report that a bunch of billionaire leftists on the left coast, primarily from Silicon Valley, spent $50 million, hired Christopher Steele to go out and find even more dirt on Donald Trump. This is in addition to whatever Hillary paid Steele. This is whatever in addition to Democrat National Committee 5. I think it's 5. Could be more. It's $50 million they paid this guy to go out and find more dirt on Trump, and they haven't found a speck. And Christopher Steele's initial report was made up out of whole cloth, bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. You would think with as much investigation there has been of Donald Trump, they would have found something. And it's obvious they don't have anything yet that they can present to the American people that'll create doubt and will start lowering Trump's approval numbers, which would then lead maybe to public pressure to get rid of him. You talk about people that are coming up dry and coming up empty, but people drilling dry holes. It's stunning. And rather than learn from it, they just keep going, and they're getting further insane. You know, I've been talking about 2 television shows that I watch. One is Homeland, and they had their season finale last night. It's unbelievable. That show could not have been written this year unless the people behind it literally believe all of this Russian stuff. Literally believe the Russians tampered with our election. It's the most, you watch it, if you have any objectivity at all, you sit there and you watch this and you ask yourself, how could otherwise intelligence people really believe what they think? And this has been another point of mine. You know, we laugh at them because they're off the rails, they're unhinged, but the thing you come back to is they do believe it. Last night on this show, The Good Fight on CBS All Access, they actually had a storyline where one of the Russian hookers Trump hired to urinate on the bed in Moscow sought out this law firm. And there's a tape of it. There's a tape. People watching this show who don't know any better are going to, and maybe this show results from what people already believe. Maybe this show is reflective of what people believe rather than trying to construct things to make people believe it. Anyway, it's incredible. It literally is incredible. We think of these people at least having some sense, but their hatred has so distorted their ability to reason and their ability to engage in common sense. It is striking to me, and it's all because hate is what's driving them. It's a poison. And each and every day we are seeing more and more evidence of how the left is literally poisoning itself. And the more hate they engage in, the more hate they seem to harbor. All of the hate that they expunge, all the hate that they supposedly get out of their systems with every late night comedy show, every goofball TV show, everything like the Saturday Night White House Correspondent, it doesn't get rid of the hate, it just compounds it. They're going to crack up. I think they already have cracked up. And they're taking as much of America with them as they go. You know, I gotta take a break here. Despite the comedian, and whatever you think about the comedian, that wasn't, to me, the real scandal of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'll tell you what I think the real scandal was when we get back. I'm going to get a couple calls in first, so be patient. We're coming right back. In New York, great to have you, sir. Welcome to the EIB Network.
Thank you, Rush. I think that the dinner, the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the caravan at the border are two big wins for Donald Trump this weekend, especially in the court of public opinion. I just think that the optics are really working in his favor.
Well, you know, a lot of people probably didn't watch the White House Correspondents' Dinner live because the drive-bys can't stop showing highlights of it. Everybody is seeing it. A lot of people are seeing it. Plus, we're playing the audio here. Like, I think you're right. But I think one of the things, you know, for the raunchiness, yeah, and Democrats standing up and cheering absolute filth, absolute rot gut sewage, standing up and cheering it. But that's not the big deal. The big deal is how they have, and it happens every year, but at some point, there's going to be a tipping point. These people are demonstrating that they are not journalists. They're left-wing extremist advocates by virtue of what they applaud and what they boo. And a lot of people still think the media is a bunch of journalists that are telling the truth, that they're objective, presenting both sides. Not after you watch this thing Saturday night. No way you would conclude that. Now, what about the caravan? What do you think about that?
I just think that, look, the message is there's a problem at our border, and I believe that that's been believed for a long time by many of us. However, to see the people down the caravan, that whole continuing saga over the last couple of weeks, it really highlights that there is this major problem. Now, those people are coming for a different reason, but it indicates we have a border problem to those who may not watch it all that carefully and understand that, you know, we have this open border.
What do you mean? What do you mean these people are coming for a different reason?
Well, they're seeking asylum as opposed to those.
So they say.
So they say.
So that's an American organization running the caravan. Did you know that?
No, sir, I did not.
Yes, sir, it is. It's not some spontaneous bunch of people getting on a train in Honduras. It's an American organization that runs this whole operation. I get to the name of it here in due course. I had that last Friday and didn't get to it. But All of this, like everything the left does, none of it's spontaneous. It's organized. It's called community organized, Obamaism. There's nothing spontaneous here, and they say they're seeking asylum. You listen to one of the interviews. I've got a story here with one of the people here being interviewed. U.S. says border crossing didn't have room for asylum seekers is the story. It's from the AP. Wendy Yanere Garcia said she was confident she'll be released into the U.S. while her asylum case is pending because she's traveling alone with her 2-year-old son who's been sick. She said that police in her hometown in Honduras jailed her for protesting construction of a hydroelectric plant and that she received death threats after being released. All I want is a place where I can work and raise my son, said the 36-year-old. Again, these organizers are all Americans. They all live in the U.S. And what this actually is, if you really want to know what this is, do you really want to know do you want me to tell you what you need to think human trafficking if you want to understand what's going on here? Because it is not spontaneously erupting. What you are being asked to believe is that in Honduras, this is purposely done to separate these people from Mexico or simply trying to get her to climb the wall. No, these are different. These people wouldn't be coming otherwise except for the war-torn status of their homelands. And they are seeking political asylum. They're seeking freedoms. Just like this guy said, they're coming for a different reason. It's not coming for a different reason. They're coming here to flood the country. You know, Angela Merkel, Trump praised her the other day, but I have to tell you, Angela Merkel is all of a sudden concerned about rising anti-Semitism in Germany. Does anybody... After you have opened your borders to 1 million people from the Middle East, you are going to all of a sudden be concerned about the rising tide of anti-Semitism in your country? You just have to laugh about this. Hey, Bill, did you happen to watch Trump on Saturday night when he was at Washington Township, Michigan?
He was incredible.
He was incredible. Did you hear what he said about the caravan?
I did indeed.
He used one word to describe it. You remember what it was?
Oh.
It was great. It's like Trump is just one of us. He said, folks, do you see the caravan? It's pathetic. It's pathetic what's happening on the southern. The president of the United States is calling what's going on pathetic. These caravan people are pathetic. And you could just see the steam rising out of the ear cavities of the American left who are trying to fool everybody into thinking this is some organic movement like protests in Ferguson, supposedly organic. All these leftist mobs, supposedly organic. They're not. Anyhow, it's time to take a brief time out, and we'll do that. We'll be back and continue before you know it. Are you telling me Mexico's a bunch of racist pigs that they will not grant these Hondurans asylum? If they're coming from Honduras, this is the law. Okay, so you've got a war-torn strife area in Honduras. You want to flee. The minute these people get to Mexico, they have asylum. Why aren't they stopping there? Why aren't they stopping in Mexico? Are you trying to tell me that they don't want to stop Mexico's? Mexico's a bunch of racists themselves? Does Mexico not have support systems or resources available? Why stop? Why not stop in Mexico? Why keep going to get to the United States? Because getting these people to the United States for the express purpose of disrupting and demographically reorienting American culture is the express intent and purpose. Happy to have you with us, folks. 800-282-2882 if you want to appear on the program. The real scandal, and I'll put this in quotes, but the real scandal at Saturday night's White House Correspondents' Dinner Well, everybody is buzzing about the horrible and crude, not funny hate fest conducted by so-called comedian. The real news of the evening is that the White House Correspondents' Dinner Association gave reporters Jake Tapper, Jim Sciutto, Evan Perez, and Carl Bernstein an award for their January 10th, 2017 report on the Steele dossier. So Hillary Clinton, you know the story. Hillary Clinton, as in a work of art, commissions this thing as opposition research. She hires Fusion GPS, which then hires a law firm to make the payment to wash the money so that it's not traceable back to Clinton. And they hire this Christopher Steele guy to go out and make up a bunch of garbage about Trump for the express purpose of using it as so-called legitimate intelligence on Trump that is designed to drive down public opinion on Trump so as to make it easy to get rid of him. So the White House Correspondents' Dinner Association, or White House Correspondents' Association, gave Jake Tapper, Jim Sciutto, Evan Perez, and Carl Bernstein an award for their January 10th report on the dossier, 2017. Now, we now know, folks, that their report was nothing but dictation from James Clapper. James Clapper was Director, National Intelligence, DNI, during the Obama administration. Now, just to make sure everybody understands DNI, after 9/11, the Bush administration and the government in general decided it needed to expand, that somehow they had missed 9/11. How did we miss this? How did our intelligence... Well, the reason we had missed it is because the Clinton administration decided to treat terrorism as a criminal act rather than enemy combatants. And so everything was done via the justice system and indictments. And a wall was created by then Clinton associate Jamie Gorelick so that the FBI and the CIA could not share information with one another. Because something had happened where it was thought that these two organizations were punishing Americans and delving into the American people's privacy in ways it wasn't permitted. So there was a wall that developed. And the reason why we didn't know 9/11 was coming, because we did. But both agencies knew only part of it. If they had been allowed to combine what they knew, we might have had a little bit more of a heads up. And so after that, the government decided it wasn't big enough. And so it created the Office of National Intelligence. And this federal agency would be the clearinghouse for all intel. The CIA would send what it knows to the DNI. The FBI would send what it found out. The DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, NSA, everybody would send what they thought they knew to this new Office of National Intelligence. Created a brand new bureaucracy. Well, a guy named James Clapper served as director of the Office of National Intelligence for Obama, and he's a left-wing hack. He is a partisan hack. And we know that Jake Tapper, Jim Sciutto, Evan Perez, and Carl Bernstein at CNN knew what they thought they knew about the dossier because Jim Clapper leaked the information to them. Worse than that, it was all part of a calculated setup to give CNN a news hook so that they could start reporting on the Steele dossier and make it public. The Steele dossier had been known for months. It was floating around Washington, and everybody knew what it was. And everybody knew that it was unverified, uncorroborated. Everybody in the media knew that none of it could be established to have happened. None of it could be proved. None of it could be verified. But the media wanted it in the public domain. How to do that? CNN needed a news hook. A news hook is a reason to report on it aside from its contents. You couldn't report on the details because none of it was verified. So they needed a way to get this thing known by the American people. The way this happened, James Clapper essentially told Comey to go brief Trump on the existence of the dossier. That happened in January. That happened on January 6th of 2017. At that point, news outlets, including CNN, BuzzFeed, Washington Post, they all have it. They're looking for an excuse to run it. On January 6th, Clapper tells Comey to brief Trump on the dossier in case somebody runs with it. So Comey follows Clapper's instructions and does a meeting with Trump where he tells him about the salacious details, such as the golden showers episode, the prostitutes peeing on the bed at the Moscow hotel where Obama and Michelle happened to stay and sleep. So, Comey, following Clapper's instructions, tells Trump about it. Clapper leaks to CNN that Trump and Obama have been briefed on the dossier. Clapper and then denies that he did this and then later had to admit that he had lied. Clapper told Comey to go tell Trump about it because that was going to be CNN's news hook. So after Comey on January 6th briefs Trump on the dossier, Clapper then goes to CNN and tells CNN that Trump has been briefed on the dossier and Obama. CNN has its hook. CNN now uses that detail and publishes its story on the dossier. After CNN published a story describing the dossier is when BuzzFeed dumps the whole thing. They published the whole thing with caveats galore. We haven't been able to verify it. We haven't been able to corroborate it. It's been floating around Washington for a while, but we at BuzzFeed think you, the American people, need to see it. Clapper, after BuzzFeed dumps the whole thing, Clapper denies that he leaked any of this to CNN. Then after Clapper gets caught, by the way, this is all in congressional reports now. None of this is up for grabs. This is all verified to have happened. Clapper denied that he was the leak to CNN, that Comey had briefed Trump. When Clapper is caught, then he admits the leak. And after all of that, Clapper is hired by CNN as an analyst and as a commentator. So, folks, on January 10th is when CNN did its story on Trump and the dossier. And is that January 10th story after Comey leaked, or after Comey informed Trump and then Clapper leaks to CNN that Comey's told Trump, the White House Correspondents Association gives 4 reporters at CNN the big award of the year for uncovering a gigantic news story involving the Trump dossier. This whole thing was a setup. When you look at the timeline of things that happened, it is obvious to anybody with even half a brain that Comey briefing Trump on the dossier was a setup designed and set up by Clapper, designed to get the dossier into so-called mainstream news cycles, thereby bringing it to life. Now, when Comey briefed Trump on it on January 6th, he did it under the guise, Mr. President, you need to see this. You need to see the kinds of things that our intelligence agencies are gathering about you. You need to be aware of these kinds of things so you can trust your intelligence community to be truthful with you. and to know of the potential pitfalls awaiting you out there. All of that was a scam. All of it was a sham. And Comey briefed Trump again in January on the 27th on the dossier for another similar reason. CNN wanted to publish the story. James Clapper made it possible, and then CNN hires James Clapper, and he's still working there today, and he's an Obama hack. And the White House Correspondents Association giving CNN its award of the year for their January 10th report on the dossier is an insult to anybody who knows what's going on here. This is like giving an award to a stenographer taking dictation, because that's exactly what these reporters did. They didn't uncover anything. The dossier had been in circulation for months. This was nothing more than a trick, a scam, what have you, to enable them to report it despite nothing in it being verified or corroborated. Now, if you have any doubt that the CNN article was the result of a setup, bear in mind that one of the reporters getting this award, Evan Perez, used to co-author articles with Glenn Simpson, who's the founder of Fusion GPS that ultimately hired Steele to write this dossier. They used to work at the Wall Street Journal together. Perez still very close with Simpson and some of the other people at Fusion GPS. But as I say, the real icing on this cake is the role of James Clapper. Clapper, along with John Brennan, told Comey to brief Trump on the dossier, knowing CNN was looking for a hook to report this thing. And as soon as Comey briefed Trump, Clapper ran to CNN and Jake Tapper with the news. Tapper and CNN ran with the story, for which they got an award last Saturday night. And then a few weeks later, James Clapper is hired by CNN, I guess, for media reporter privilege. Back in a moment. Buried within a newly declassified congressional report on Russian meddling in the election is the revelation I just shared with you. That James Clapper leaked information about the Steele dossier and other high-level government briefings about it. CNN. Not only that, he lied to Congress about it. It's one of the findings within the 253-page report the House Intelligence Committee wrote that Clapper leaked details of a dossier, the briefing given to Trump by Comey. Clapper leaked it to Jake Tapper, and then, according to the report, lied to Congress in testimony about the leak. Later, because he had to admit the lie to get straight, and then CNN hired him a few months after all of this happened. So it's in a House Intelligence Committee report, and it's, by the way, it's not highlighted. It's kind of buried in the 253-page report. It's not something that the Intelligence Committee blared with. It's not in the press release of highlights from the report. It's just one of the other findings. It's a big deal. It perfectly illustrates the incestuous relationship that liberals have with government bureaucracies and agencies and the media. But to me, the highlight of this is that Jake Tapper and these other three guys at CNN literally were taking dictation. And they got an award for it from the White House Correspondents' Dinner Association on Saturday night. And they're walking all puffed up, job well done. We are really good journalists. Look what we uncovered. You didn't cover anything. You didn't dig up anything. A guy named James Clapper from the Obama administration came and told you about it. This before Trump was inaugurated, folks. January 6th is when Comey briefs Trump. January 10th is when CNN runs their story. They get an award for it. Back to the phones. Ken, St. Charles, Missouri, outside St. Louis. Great to have you, sir. How are you?
Hey, Rush, do you realize what Miss Wolf provided the right for the 2018 and 2020 elections? It's time to rejoice. She gave us 17 minutes highlighting just how hateful, how racist, how sexist and filthy and vile the left is. You know what, brother? Bye-bye to any blue wave. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. It's going to be tough to use that unless she gets tied to a candidate. And I don't think she's going to get tied to a candidate unless... No, I am not going to go there. No, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to get in the gutter with this babe. I was going to make a snarky comment about extramarital sex resulting in pregnancy, but I'm not going to mention that. How is this babe going to get tied to a candidate? What candidate? Now, if a candidate hires her to come in and do an appearance, or if a candidate hires her to do a commercial for it, and you never know, a California politician may think she's the ticket. There could be some wacko leftists who think this woman doing a campaign appearance for him or her candidate running for re-election and do an endorsement on stage might put him over to, and don't poo-poo that, folks. The hatred on the left among Democrat voters knows no bounds either. I think it's always been there. Social media has exposed it. It's always been there. Everybody blames social media for creating it or causing. No. These hate mongers just didn't have the outlet for it that social media provides them. Outside of that, I don't know how you would take excerpts. You'd have to run generic commercials against the Democrat Party. You would still have to tie this woman to Democrat candidates somehow. Or am I missing something on this? This would be pretty risky to do. It might have commercial value in other ways, particularly internet buys. Long form internet commercials of 2-3 minutes run by PACs and this kind of thing to make points on various issues she talked about. But for candidates, kind of dicey. CNN being given this fake, this utterly phony award. If this is just me, but let's say I'm me. I'm not Jake Tapper. I'm not anybody at CNN. Let's say that I get a leak. I'm sitting here. I'm minding my own business, bothering nobody. I get a phone call, and it's some government official who's giving me a piece of information that everybody wants, but nobody has, and I get the exclusive. And all I did was sit here and open an email, okay? And then I report it breathlessly. And the media goes bonkers. And then somewhere down the road, as far-fetched as this sounds, somebody gives me an award. I would turn it down. I would turn down the award on the basis I didn't do anything but answer an email. I didn't ferret it out. I didn't hunt it down. I didn't find it and independently confirm it. I simply took dictation. I wouldn't accept the award because I'm not into phoniness as mayor of Realville. So you've got to hear this. Now, again, the whole thing is a setup so that CNN can run the story on the dossier. Clapper, DNI, instructs Comey. Now stop and think of this. Comey's out there denying there's a deep state. Clapper at DNI calls Comey, says, Comey, go brief Trump on the dossier. Comey says, yes, sir. Goes up and briefs Trump. After that happens, Clapper calls CNN and says, guess what? The director of the FBI, I can tell you with good authority, has just informed the president of the dossier. CNN's 4 reporters start having orgasms. Oh, my God, really? Yes, I can confirm that this has happened. So they run the story. Then Clapper lies about being the leak. Then he turns around and admits that he's the leak, and then CNN hires him. And then these guys all get an award for this. And here is how it happened Saturday night at the White House Correspondents Association dinner.
The Merriman Smith Award for broadcast goes to Evan Perez, Jim Sciutto, Jake Tapper, and Carl Bernstein of CNN.
Right on. Let's a lot of applause here for this.
These four journalists and a number of other CNN reporters broke the story that the intelligence community had briefed President Barack Obama and President-elect Donald Trump that Russia had compromising information about Mr. Trump. The CNN team later reported that then FBI Director James Comey personally briefed Trump about the dossier.
That's why I say this is the scandal of the night, not the comedian. This. There is no scandalous information about President Trump. To this day, the dossier remains unverified and uncorroborated. There's not a word of truth in it. These four reporters had compromising information about Mr. Trump. The CNN team later reported that then FBI Director James Comey personally briefed Trump about the dossier that Russia had compromising information about Mr. Trump. Total BS. Total BS. Look at the sanctimony. These guys didn't report anything. They didn't break anything in terms of a story. They took dictation. This is how serious these people take themselves, folks. And this whole thing was organized. It was structured. I also got an email. What do you mean, Rush? All these Hollywood people funding the investigation, the dossier. You haven't heard this. Let me pass this on to you. A group of wealthy donors from New York and California have forked out $50 million. Now, remember something as I go through this. When Comey briefed Trump about the dossier, he did not tell Trump where it came from. He didn't tell Trump that it was the product of the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. He did not say that it was bought and paid for by the Hillary campaign. He did not, to this day. He told Bret Baier last Thursday night that he doesn't even know that to this day, which cannot be true. But that's his story, and he's sticking with it. This is an additional investigation. These guys did not pay their $50 million along with Hillary and whatever she paid. This $50 million was forked over after Steele came up with nothing. These people have so much hate that when Steele's dossier failed, they hired him again. In this case, a group of wealthy donors, New York and California, paid $50 million to fund a Russia investigation by Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS, and a former Senate staffer for Dianne Feinstein. A former staffer for Dianne Feinstein was in on this. That is also reported. It's in a footnote in the House Intelligence Committee newly released report on Russian interference in the campaign. While the dossier project failed to help Hillary Clinton win the presidency, Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele have continued their work. And that's according to statements from the former Feinstein staffer. His name is Daniel Jones. He runs the Penn Quarter Group. It's a consulting group in Washington. The former staffer for Feinstein was working with these millionaires to pay Christopher Steele to keep digging. In other words, this investigation is separate and apart from the Hillary campaign funded Steele investigation that gave us the Steele dossier. It began later. It continues to this day. Steele is still digging. After coming up with nothing, these rich Democrat donors of New York and California remain unsatisfied. Their unbridled hate is separating them from their money. They are so convinced that the P-tape exists. That's what this all is. And I'm telling you, folks, do not be surprised, like I said last week, if out of nowhere there is a grainy black and white video of some people urinating on a bed down the road. Do not be surprised. When you pay $50 million to an investigator, he better come up with something. After Hillary had paid whatever she paid, a DNC, and their payments to Steele were in the millions as well. The House report states that in March 2017, Daniel Jones, the former Feinstein staffer, told the FBI about a project he's working on with Steele and Fusion GPS, paid for $250 million by 7 to 10 wealthy donors from New York and California. They've got it on the brain. They're so convinced that all of this is true that if they just pay more money to the guy they paid all these millions to, it came up empty. If they give him another 50, he'll come up with something. Back to the phones we go. This is Lisa in Highland, New York. Lisa, great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hi, Rush. Thank you for what you do. Yes, I'm from Highland, New York, and Highland Beach, Florida, not far from you. I want to make just 2 quick points, if that's okay. First, with regard to the scandal on the CNN, the Correspondents' Dinner. First of all, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is an amazing role model for women across this country. She sat there poised and beautiful, and she is definitely the epitome of resilience and strength and what feminism should be about. I am a successfully professional Christian married woman of wife and mother, and educated, and retired at 50 from being a bank president, and I consult, and so many of my girlfriends across the country. I polled at least 20 of us who were on the Trump train from day one because we took out the books out of the library and read about Donald Trump. We studied him. We knew what he was going to do for our country. We are very smart. We totally get Economics 101, and we are still behind him. We knew we weren't voting for an altar boy. We're proud of what he's been able to accomplish, and we're on that Trump train. Don't ever believe the polls, and that's my first point.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me ask. Wait a minute. Hold on. I need to ask you a question about Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Okay.
Because there's a bit of contradiction out there. In fact, hold on. I got to take a break so I don't get too far behind in these segments. Hang on. I'll come back to you when we get back. In Highland, New York, you said that Sarah Huckabee Sanders showed herself to be a role model for professional women. I need to ask you a question about something, because we live in a culture where fighting back is rewarded. One of the reasons that Donald Trump is so loved and supported is that when people say things like that about him, it doesn't take 5 minutes, and he's on Twitter burying them. Why is Sarah Huckabee Sanders being praised for sitting there stoically and not reacting and not walking out, sitting there and taking it, not making a spectacle out of it? Why is that garnering? And you're not the only one. Maggie Haberman, New York Times, thought that she was the success story tonight. So how do you explain the difference here?
Oh, that's easy, Russ. Thanks for asking. If she walked out, they would be talking about her walking out today, that she can't handle the heat.
No, I'm not saying walk out. Get up and slap the hell out of the woman while she's up there making the comments.
I think in that moment, she did the best she could, and she showed an amazing strength. You know, it doesn't mean she's not going to take questions on it today or tomorrow in a press conference, but certainly, whatever happened to the old Michelle Obama statement, when they go low, we go high, or something to that effect. I mean, I think Sarah.
See, this is my point. This is my point, and I've always, folks, I have tried never to become one of these old fuddy-duddy, get off my lawn kind of people as I matured in life. And I can remember where the way Sarah Huckabee Sanders behaved on Saturday night was the way to do it. That was the classy way to do it. Do not give the provocateur the satisfaction of even showing you're upset. Be bigger than the insult. Be bigger than the person throwing the mud. Do not walk out. Do not express anger. Do not confront the person afterwards. Sit there and be bigger. And that used to be universal. That was a standard way of dealing with it. Look, let me make this personal. Back when this program started, and I've told versions of this story a number of times. My whole life, nobody ever called me a racist. Nobody ever thought I was. Nobody thought I hated anybody. Nobody thought I was a bigot. But 6 months after doing this radio show, I was all of those. I became a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe because the media was launching those salvos and those accusations every day. I understood it, but I still didn't know how to deal with it. And I sought advice. How do I deal with this? And I had every bit of advice you can think. You can't let that stand. You've got to fight back on that. You have got to make sure that doesn't stick. Other people said, laugh it off. Don't react to all this stuff because all it's going to do is fuel them. And every bit of advice had its strengths and every bit of advice had its weaknesses. But the consensus view, and I'm talking 25 years ago, don't let it be seen to bother you. Don't react to it. You'll only amplify it and make it big. Whatever you do, do not indicate it bothers you. That's what Sarah Huckabee Sanders did. And she's being universally praised for it, which I really dig. I really like it. But let's face it, the culture today is different. And people who don't fight back, the Republicans, for example, George W. Bush, Republicans in the House who don't fight back against all of these slanderous allegations, their voters get frustrated and mad that they sit there and take it and that they don't fight back against it. Donald Trump does, and he is rewarded with winning the presidency for that and other reasons. So I just find it interesting that the standard good manners, classy way to deal with such a thing is the way Sarah Sanders did it. That's 25 years ago. She does it. Saturday night is universally praised. And in the midst of a culture where pushing back, fighting back, not taking it, going to Twitter, going to Facebook, doing something to respond to it is also applauded. And it's a dichotomy. And it makes me wonder about the universality of ideals, the universality of good manners, and the right thing to do, as having been established over the long haul of human existence and human behavior. I mean, things are deemed to be classy for a reason. Things are deemed to be unclassy for a reason. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is being described as the epitome of class by practically every. I'm not including the low rents on social media. I'm talking about people within her sphere. You know, even New York Times and Washington Post journalists are praising her for this. If she had fought back or if she had reacted, I wonder what kind of assessment that stratagem would have garnered. I gather not the same amount of respect that the way she dealt with it is getting. It just, to me, shows that the time-honored ways of dealing with fairly common occurrences in life still triumph. In other words, folks, it's a really, really good sign that Sarah Huckabee Sanders' behavior on Saturday, in the face of all this, was said to be classy, and that the perp, the comedian, is the one that's seen as in the gutter. Back in just a moment.
You're right.
Just finished a presentation in which he revealed that the Iranians are indeed cheating on the nuke deal. He revealed Iranian nuclear designs, blueprints, spreadsheets, as he revealed new dramatic intelligence on Monday, which Netanyahu claimed shows Iran is brazenly lying about its nuclear weapons program and that the country is not complying with the deal it signed in 2015. You know, I love the use of the word claimed. Drive-bys, that is a word they use to signify that they don't believe what they're being told. So in the case of Netanyahu, Netanyahu claims to have and claims to say and claims to point out that the Iranians are cheating on the nuke deal. Rather than just today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu presented evidence that, which has forced him to conclude the Iranians are cheating on the... No. Today, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu claimed... Typical drive-by media. Oh, speaking, did you... Folks, this happened over the weekend, Friday after the program is over, and I've got to point this out to you. Linda Vester, formerly of NBC and Fox News, accuses Brokaw of sexually harassing her 2 times. So Brokaw gets up at 4 a.m., Friday or Saturday, I forget which day, to write a long letter to friends and colleagues. And he describes her attack and the media reporting it without questioning. He describes himself as the victim of a drive-by media hit. And I know that when he did that, I know everybody in the drive-by said, damn it. That's what Limbaugh calls this. That's what Limbaugh says. But none of them, and Brokaw, echoing Rush Limbaugh's description, described his experience as that of being hit by a drive-by media shooting. I know every one of you who saw Brokaw say it, I know you immediately, yes, Limbaugh, that's exactly what you people are to drive, except Brokaw was ripping the Washington Post for writing unquestioningly. Like, they didn't say that Linda Vester claims. They didn't say Linda Vester claims that Brokaw did this or that. Linda Vester says that Tom Brokaw grabbed the back of her head and forced her mouth onto his. And a tongue wrangle then began. And Brokaw called the coverage of this a drive-by hit. I just loved it. So anyway, Ari Fleischer, who was the former press secretary for George W. Bush, after seeing the Netanyahu presentation, tweeted, "This is one powerful presentation by Netanyahu. Anybody who doesn't think Iran was lying and still is lying doesn't know Iran." But wait. Obama said it was a deal the world couldn't refuse. Trump has been out saying the same thing that Netanyahu. So we have some sound bites from Netanyahu. We'll start here with soundbite number 27. It's in Tel Aviv, and Netanyahu is conducting this presentation demonstrating how Iran lied after signing the nuclear agreement.
A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained 0.5 ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages. Another 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Everything you're about to see is an exact copy of the original Iranian material. Here's what the files included: incriminating documents, incriminating charts, incriminating presentations, incriminating blueprints, incriminating photos, incriminating videos, and more. We've known for years that Iran had a secret nuclear weapons program called Project Ahmad. We can now prove that Project Ahmad was a comprehensive program to design, build, and test nuclear weapons.
Netanyahu says that the Israelis have now gotten hold of 500 ton of documents. 500 ton of Iranian documents. Every time I see something, I am so glad I don't write anything down. I got to thinking, Brian, you'll be interested. If at the end of this illustrious broadcast career, can you imagine the Rush Limbaugh broadcast library? Like there are presidential libraries. There's nothing to put in it, document-wise. I'm amazed that presidential libraries have these tens of thousands of documents and stuff. I just have never taken those kinds of notes on anything. 500 ton of Iranian documents from their nuclear weapons program. Here's the next soundbite we have from Netanyahu.
This was a secret underground enrichment facility that the Iranians built under a mountain. You don't put thousands of centrifuges under a mountain to produce medical isotopes. You put them there for one reason: nuclear weapons. Here's an original Iranian blueprint of Fordo. And what happened was that Iran continued to build Fordo years, secretly build it. Years after Project Ahmad ended, here's what it looks like. That's the entrance. It goes under a mountain. You also will not be surprised that Iran insisted on keeping Fordo. And amazingly, the nuclear deal enabled it to do it.
Well, I'm not surprised. Folks, this is not brain science here, rocket science. Obama himself is the one all these days saying that we've got no right to tell the Iranians what they can and can't do with nuclear weapons. Nobody told us we couldn't. Who are we to tell the Iranians what they can and can't do? So then why did you do the deal, Mr. Obama? Well, we wanted to limit their ability, make sure they couldn't use nuclear weapons for 10 or 15 years. But we don't have the right to stop them. And so in the process, Obama signifying that he has no concept of good guys and bad guys. And certainly not the U.S. is the good guys. And certainly, and don't doubt me on this, there's no way Obama and anybody in his confederation, there's nobody believes the United States has moral authority in things like this. Because we're too tainted by our own illegitimate founding to have moral authority over anything, including freedom, leadership, and the like. Here's the final Netanyahu bite.
The Iran deal, the nuclear deal, is based on lies. It's based on Iranian lies and Iranian deception. 100,000 files right here prove that they lied. In a few days' time, President Trump will make his decision on what to do with the nuclear deal. I'm sure he'll do the right thing for the United States, the right thing for Israel, and the right thing for the peace of the world.
I'll tell you, you need to see what Netanyahu did. It was like a classroom presentation, visual aids, photos, charts, graphs, all of this, spreadsheets. He's not just up there saying we got 500 of documents. He's showing some of the documents. They've got all these files on various media forms, CD, thumb drive, DVD, what have you. Now, Trump, I love it. Trump's out there. He had a presser this afternoon, joint presser with another world leader. And Trump said Netanyahu's speech shows I am 100% right on the Iran deal. I just love it. I am 100% right on the Iran deal. Anyway, folks, it's great to have you. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Ever since I printed this story out on April 28th, this is going to be Saturday night, I've been chomping at the bit. You want to hear the headline? University of Texas to treat masculinity as a mental health issue. The Counseling and Mental Health Center at the University of Texas at Austin recently launched a new program to help male students take control over their gender identity and develop a healthy sense of masculinity. Treating masculinity as if it were a mental health crisis, Masculine University of Texas, is organized by the school's counseling staff and most recently organized a poster series encouraging students to develop a healthy model of masculinity. The program is predicated on a critique of so-called restrictive masculinity. The program says that men suffer when they are told to act like a man, or when they are encouraged to fulfill traditional gender roles, such as being successful, be the breadwinner. This is corrupting men. It's destroying men. It's putting too much pressure on men. Masculinity is causing men to crack up. The demand that they be successful, the demand that they provide for the family, the very idea that they should act like a man is tearing them apart, and we need to do something about it, they say. Though you might enjoy, quote, taking care of people, unquote, or being, quote, active, unquote, Masculine UT warns that many of these attributes are actually dangerous, claiming that traditional ideas of masculinity put men into rigid, restrictive boxes which prevent them from developing their emotional maturity. What are the odds that a bunch of women are running this? Or at least provided the germination of the idea? The program is currently without leadership, but not for long. The school's in the process of hiring a healthy masculinities coordinator to run the program. A school official tells PJ Media, who reports this, that some hopeful hirees are interviewing for the position later this week. Healthy masculinities coordinator. So there you have it. University of Texas. Red State, Texas. Masculinity is being treated as a mental health challenge that too many men are simply crumbling under the pressure to be a man. So if it's not a good thing for a man to be a man, then what are they going to turn men into? What do you think is the alternative if masculinity is a problem? Then what are these guys going to become? In a related story, Democrats losing support of millennials. This according to a new Reuters poll. Reuters is panicked over this. Democrats are losing support among the millennial bloc of voters. Survey found that 46% of respondents said they would vote for the Democrat candidate over the Republican in their congressional district. That number's down 9 points. Used to be 55% said they would back a Democrat. Now it's 46%. Reuters noted that support for Democrats is particularly fading among white millennials. While 47% of white millennials said they would vote for the Democrat candidate in 2016, only 39% said they vote for the Democrat this year. What does that do to the blue wave? Because the millennials are supposedly going to be leading the blue wave here. Young people fed up with Trump, fed up with Trumpism, fed up with rampant masculinity as personified by Trump. This poll was of 16,000 millennial voters. It was conducted online from January to March of this year. So enthusiasm for the Democrat Party is waning among millennials. I wonder why that would be. Why would this be happening? Is it that tax cuts are working? Is it reality of some kind? The perception of reality is setting in? Has the boost in disposable income affected the thinking of indoctrinated millennials? Are they exhausted after 2 years of hysteria brought to them by late-night comedians and social media? Could it be that 2 years or a year and a half of threats and panic over what's going to happen because of Trump isn't happening? I don't know. I was just asking the questions open-endedly. Can take a stab at why it's changing, but that's for later. The fact that it is noteworthy. Another companion story, a rebirth of self-reliance, food stamp, welfare, Medicaid, disability rolls are all dropping under Trump. The Department of Agriculture, which runs the food stamp program. By the way, the food stamp program's real name is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And the Ag Department is reporting that enrollment in January was 40.7 million. That's the lowest it's been in 9 years. In the months since Trump has been in office, the number of people collecting food stamps plunged by nearly 2 million. Same is true for welfare. Enrollment in the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program dropped 12% last year to reach 2.3 million. Better still, the number of people on Social Security disability insurance was down to 8.6 million in March. That's a decline of more than 100,000 in about 15 months. And even enrollment in Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program dropped by almost 1 million in 2017. These are stunning numbers. We haven't seen numbers like this across the board like this, and I don't know how long. I mean, this is, you just have to add this to all of the other remarkable things that are changing for the better in this country, many of them economics related, some of them cultural. There has to be a reason for it. None of this stuff was going in this direction when Obama was in the White House, or even Bush before him. We'll be back. Who is a member of Congress from Alabama. Mo Brooks has offered a reason why so many Republicans are retiring from the House. He says it's because they fear the risk of being assassinated because of what happened to Steve Scalise and because of the out-of-control madness on the part of leftists everywhere, particularly on social media. Mo Brooks said the flood of departing GOP members of Congress might be related to fear of assassination from violent leftists following the deadly shooting attack on the Republican baseball practice in 2017. Now, I wonder, I've not heard anybody else raise this as a possibility, but once something like this happens one time, and proportionately lack of really any outrage about it, I don't know, you may have a point. And this is Laura in Lynchburg, Virginia. Welcome. Great to have you here with us.
Hi, Rush. How are you? I love you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Hate. I had to call in on Friday. Your last caller went over a list of your favorite female names, and he wondered why Laura wasn't on there. And you said you hadn't received a call from a Laura, so I had to call in.
Well, you know, I looked it up, and Laura was on the list. A caller was wrong about it. He had made a mistake, so have no fear. Your name is in my all-time top 10 favorite female names list.
Oh, great. I wanted to talk about the caravan. You were saying it was a stunt, and I believe that. These illegals supposedly were coming to the border denouncing their country, yet when they got there, they were raising their Honduran flag. So one, I think it was a stunt to show Trump has no compassion for these people. And of course, it's for votes. However, I did hear that they allowed a few transgender in, a couple of children, and some single moms.
Well, I think that's probably true. But it's not, you know, when you say a stunt, it really it's a stunt in the sense that an American organization is responsible for this. but it's not a stunt in terms of the objective. The objective is to flood this country with people who have no desire to assimilate and become, well, for lack of a better way of putting it, part of the American culture. And this is the stunt. I mean, if you want to call it a stunt, this is the political objective, is to dilute, to weaken, to water down the culture of the United States that stems from our founding. That's all of this is. Illegal immigration, the caravan of people seeking political asylum. There are people really are seeking political asylum, by the way. There are people who do this by virtue of the law, following the law, playing by the rules, and this kind of thing. But this is, I mean, waving the Honduran flag is kind of a giveaway if you're fleeing Honduras because it's so oppressive. And you can't stand living there anymore. You don't think your kids can stay alive if you keep them in Honduras. What the hell are you doing waving the Honduran flag? I think part of it is to show Trump as a heartless SOB and all that, but the much larger objective is done in coordination with the Democrat Party. And I was thinking the other day, I was looking for ways of explaining the difference in the Democrat Party today and, say, 30 years ago. And I don't know what made me think of it. It was something that was happening that I said, I can make a point of this. I don't remember what the catalyst that ignited my thought process in this, but you remember the 1968 Democrat convention in Chicago. I mean, the 60s leftist radicals tore Chicago up, and they ruined the prospects of the Democrat Party's presidential race that year, Hubert Humphrey. They just destroyed. And I'm talking about the Tom Haydens and the Abby Hoffmans and all of these clowns, the 60s radicals, were protesting the Democrat Party. They protested the Republicans as well, but they specifically went to Chicago during the Democrat National Convention. Mayor Daley had to call the cops on them. It was a full-fledged 100% riot for days, and it just destroyed. That would not happen today. The reason is that those radicals that were protesting the Democrat Party in the 60s have become the Democrat Party today. They and their kids are the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has become the home of real radical extreme leftists. And what's amazing about that to me is how many rank and file, quote unquote, American citizens have bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. The Democrat Party has undergone one of the greatest, at the same time, silent revolutions that we have seen in American politics. Because the Democrat Party today, it may have figureheads like Chuck U. Schumer and Dick Durbin, these guys that make you think of the standard old Democrats in the image of Robert Strauss, the old Texan guy who used to run the party. Some of those guys in the 60s and 70s who I mean, they were Democrats, but they were not communists. They were not radical leftists, but the radical left communist extremists had the Democrat Party as their home. And when the Democrat Party wasn't playing ball, wasn't far left enough, then they raised hell with it, such as in Chicago. Well, those people have become the Democrat Party today. And it's a massive transformation. And they have swept so many what you would just consider to be rank and file average ordinary American Democrats are now full-fledged radical extreme leftist nuts. And it just seems to all have happened under the radar. And when I first became really aware was after Obama was elected. These people seemed to just, The party all of a sudden seemed overnight to become dominated by radical left extremists. When Bush was in office for those 8 years, they were there, yeah, and they were making noise, yeah, but it was obvious they were in the minority. Growing, but obviously the minority. When Obama's elected and then immaculated, it was made to look like all of a sudden the country had had this massive transformation to the left. Via the common, ordinary, average American Democrat living anywhere in the country, not as identified by liberal leaders elected and in certain positions in government in Washington. Anyway, let me take one more call before we have to go to the break. It's Martin in Gainesville, Florida. Great to have you. Hi.
Thanks for taking my call, Rush. I have two questions regarding this illegal immigrant caravan. First, if Mexico granted them asylum, which they must have done to allow those people to enter their nation on that caravan train that came from Honduras,
true,
then they are no longer in danger, and therefore, on our end, there is no reason for them to be granted asylum, given that they are no longer in danger.
Exactly. Once they get to Mexico, they've got their asylum.
So we could tack that on and say, listen, Mexico, you don't want to play ball. If you let them in and give them asylum, then we will not allow that to happen on our end. And if you don't give them asylum, they should not come in.
Even before you get there, why don't, if these people are seeking asylum, if they are genuinely escaping an unspeakable horror and tyranny, when they get to Mexico, why don't they stop and breathe a sigh of relief and say, we've made it? Because they've got their asylum once they get to Mexico. What is it about Mexico they don't want to stay?
Right. My second question is this. It's hard to imagine that in the political and financial chaos of Mexico that any lawyer would do pro bono work. Who's paying those attorneys to advise these people when they come in?
They're Americans.
Golly, that's just not right, sir.
It's an American. You know, I promised to find a name of the group, and I haven't had a chance to. But the name of the group of people that's actually running this caravan is known, and they're all American. This is an American organization running this, organizing it. There's nothing spontaneous about it.